All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a wild story out of Idaho, where one homeowner, a guy named Jeremy Bass, is going up against what he claims is a totally rigged foreclosure system. We're talking venture capital, a tangled web of law firms, and a fight for over $300,000 of his own home equity.
Okay, to really get this, we need to start with a key idea at the heart of the whole legal battle, something called a temporal trap. So what is that? Well, think of it as a kind of legal ambush. The other side makes a move right at the last second, leaving you with absolutely no time to fire back. It's a way to win a case on a technicality, by basically running out the clock, and you're going to see it plays a huge role in this story.
And the stakes here, they couldn't be higher. We're talking $305,000. That's how much equity Jeremy Bass had in his home when all of this started. So this isn't just about a house, you know? For him, it's a massive chunk of his life savings. And suddenly, it's all on the line.
So let's start with things get really dramatic. The foreclosure auction itself. You picture it, right? The courthouse steps, a property being sold to the highest bidder. But according to Bass, the ending of this particular story might have been written long before the auction even began. And on February 29, 2024, the hammer comes down. The property is sold. The winners? A couple of LLCs from Utah, DPW Enterprises and Mountain Prime 2018. They are officially the new owners of Jeremy Bass's home. But how they won? Well, that's what raises a ton of questions.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. This is a quote from the buyer's own lawyer, said right in court. He's openly admitting that his clients called up the trustee, the person who's supposed to be running a fair and impartial auction, to get the opening bid ahead of time.
And get this, the check they brought wasn't for a round number. They showed up with a pre-printed check for this exact amount, $165,346.71. It matched the winning bid down to the very last penny.
And that's the million-dollar question that this whole case is built on, right? In a real auction, nobody knows the final price until the bidding stops. So how could anyone possibly show up with a check for the exact winning amount already printed? Bass argues there's only one way, if the auction wasn't competitive at all. So how did we even get to an auction in the first place? To get that, we've got to rewind a bit. The whole foreclosure was based on a loan that Bass says shouldn't have even been on the books, a kind of phantom debt backed up by a super confusing paper trail for a loan he believes was settled more than a decade ago.
Okay, let's walk through this timeline because the paper trail is where it gets really weird. It starts normally in 2008 with the original loan, but then just a year later, a full reconveyance is filed. That document should have been the end of it, but nope, things get strange. In 2012, Bank of America acts like the loan's still alive. By 2021, a totally new company is trying to get Bass to sign papers backdated almost a decade, all leading up to the 2024 foreclosure on this debt that on paper looks like it was already dead.
So just to be super clear about this, a full reconveyance is basically the game over screen for a mortgage. It's the official document that says the debt is paid, the loan is done, and the lender has no more claim on your property. It's supposed to be the end of the story, but in this case, it was just the beginning of a whole new chapter.
So let's talk about the players in this game, because what Bass is alleging isn't just a simple mistake by one company. He's saying it's the result of a whole interconnected system. A foreclosure machine where all the parts work together.
Take a look at this cast of characters. You've got the loan servicer, the trustee who ran the auction, and the law firm for the guys who won the auction. And here's the thing, they aren't strangers. They're all members of the same industry groups, They go to the same conferences. They operate in the same circles. It's a very small world.
So, these companies say they're all separate and independent, but Bass claims this is what he calls a round-robin system that's just designed to create conflicts of interest. And the proof? Listen to this. He contacted over 120 law firms in 3 different states, and not a single one would take his case. The reason they almost all gave? A conflict of interest.
So with no lawyer willing or able to help him, Jeremy Bass had to represent himself. And once he got into the courtroom, he ran into a whole new kind of wall. The court's own procedural rules.
And this leads us to a really important legal idea in his case. He wasn't just pro se, which is the term for representing yourself. He argues he was per force pro se, meaning he was forced into that position because the very industry he was fighting had created a system where he was basically boxed out from getting any legal help.
And remember that temporal trap we talked about at the beginning? Well, here it is in action. The other side's lawyers filed a bunch of new arguments just 4 days before a huge hearing. Bass scrambled, worked all weekend, and filed his response on time. And the judge? She refused to even look at it, citing procedure. His response was just ignored, leaving their last-minute arguments completely unanswered.
So, facing a system he felt was completely stacked against him, Bass didn't just roll over. Instead, he got strategic. He basically built a legal fortress around his property, using some really clever moves from basic contract law. And this shows his brilliant 3-part strategy. First, the lease. He signed a 2-year lease with a tenant, which immediately brought federal tenant protection laws into play. Second, a storage agreement. He made the tenant the official custodian of all his personal stuff left in the house. The result? Together, these things created a legal shield. The new owners couldn't just file for a simple eviction anymore. Now they had to deal with a complicated mess of landlord-tenant law and property rights.
And this all boils down to the huge, fundamental question that Jeremy Bass has now put before the Idaho Supreme Court. Basically, can a procedural rule, like the one that stopped the judge from reading his response, be used to make a potentially fraudulent outcome legit? It's a question that really challenges the whole idea of justice, leaving you wondering, what happens when following the rules of the game seems to lead to the completely wrong result?